Residents in Segunda Beach have been fuming over the construction of the new harbor in Cienfuegos Bay. But the more he thinks about it, the more Mayor Beacon sees it as an opportunity. He's wanted the old industrial park cleaned up for years, and now he finally has a way to make it happen. You see, rezoning the park alone wasn't enough. Existing users are grandfathered in, and new tenants can still move into vacant buildings as long as their use matches what was there before. But the biggest issue is that with no alternative space for industrial, the rezoning only makes the park more valuable. But with the new harbor, having industrial uses nearby makes sense. And with the right incentives, the city might be able to lure existing businesses to move nearby. So the mayor formulates a plan, and within short order, he has the support to implement it. First, the city uses municipal bonds to buy the land between the university and the harbor. Then, they annex it into the city and draft a master plan for a business park. And after that, they seek a public-private partnership to develop the site. A public-private partnership is a deal between a government and a private company to work together on a project. In this case, the city would give the land to the developer for free and build all infrastructure associated with the project. In turn, the developer would commit to constructing shell buildings to draw new and existing businesses to the site. And to make the whole project more appealing, the city offers a 5-year tax abatement, or full exemption on property taxes, to any business that relocates from the old industrial park to this new one. Their goal is to get at least 75% of the old industrial site users to move to this new park. With an offer like that, multiple developers respond to the solicitation. Within a few months, a developer is selected and shovels are in the ground, with many businesses already slated to relocate to the site. So in this episode, we're building that new business park. And along the way, we'll also make a few adjustments to the port and the farms based on your feedback. And if you're excited to roll up your sleeves and dive into this new industrial park, hit the like button. Or if you're just happy that this paves the way for cleaner uses near Lake Segunda, hit the like button for that too and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Or just leave an emoji letting me know how you feel for the sake of engagement. But before we jump in, it's going to be a scorcher here in Madison today, 92 degrees. And that's one reason I'm excited to tell you about today's video sponsor, Bombas. Now, you probably think about socks when you think of Bombas, which might make you wonder why I'm talking about them on such a hot day. But did you know they make awesome sandals too? They're super comfortable, lightweight and grippy, perfect to wear with or without socks. So they work on both hot and cooler days. They're also ideal for a trip to the water park, which honestly sounds pretty good on a day like today. And of course, Bombas makes the best socks I've ever worn. But I don't just love Bombas because everything they make is high quality. I love them because of their mission. For every item you purchase, they donate an essential item of clothing to someone in need. One purchased equals one donated. And to date, they donated over 150 million items, which I think is incredible. Plus, everything is backed by their 100% happiness guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied, they'll handle free returns or exchanges, no questions asked. So feel good and do good with Bombas. New customers get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/cityplanner and use code cityplanner at checkout. And Bombas now offers international shipping, so you can get Bombas no matter where you live. A huge thank you to longtime channel partner Bombas for sponsoring another video. Now let's get back to it. We're going to be building our new business park right here, right across the river from our harbor. But before we build anything, I want to baseline our existing business park so we know just how big this new business park has to be. So here's our existing business park. It's about 6 blocks big with an aggregate mine, and it has about 6,000 jobs. Now that's a lot of jobs, and the main reason for that is almost every single building through here is a level 5 industrial building. So these have a ton of jobs. This one right here, for instance, has 100 employees. This one right here has 250. Now, if we imagine that the average number of employees at one of these buildings is about 150, we'd have to have 40 factories to be able to meet this business park, which when you put it that way, doesn't seem like all that many, but it's going to be a lot if we don't want it to look like this. And I absolutely want to do better than this. This looks like it's industrial that was just randomly spammed here to meet a need, not industrial that looks like real industrial. And that's really my goal for this new industrial park. I want it to feel realistic and look realistic. And because of that, I decided to do a little bit of research, take some inspiration from real-world industrial parks. Starting out with this one here in Oakland, California. And the area that we're looking at right now is near Canal Boulevard and Cutting Boulevard. And a few things jump out to me right away. First and foremost, there is a ton of storage here, be it warehousing, oil storage, aggregate storage, mineral storage. It's all here, all the storage. Second, I'm noticing just how big these parcels are. There's not a lot of roadway infrastructure in here, at least not local roadway infrastructure. There's a ton internal to these sites, but the parcels themselves are massive. In comparison to the nearby residential blocks, some of these parcels are 9 blocks big. They're huge. The second place I wanted to take a bit of inspiration from is in San Diego, near Harbor Drive. And the first thing that jumps out to me here is just how straight Chola's Creek is. Now this is clearly to deal with erosion, and it gives me the comfort to completely straighten up the creeks that are going through our industrial area. We're gonna key up the entire thing just like they did here in San Diego. Now just like in Oakland, there's a ton of storage here, but it feels like everything is packed much more tightly. Every square inch of this industrial area is filled to the brim with stuff. So we're gonna do the exact same thing. So now that we've baselined things and found a bit of inspiration, let's move on to building our infrastructure. One of my goals of the business park is to try to make sure that it's truly multimodal, that freight can get here by train, by truck, or by boat, and that there's as little friction between those modes as possible. Now, because rail is a component of that, we're gonna build it first to make sure that there's as few at-grade crossings as possible. So there are really two different ways that we can get into the business park by train. One would be right here, trying to find a way to get through all of this madness at the harbor and then over to the business park. The other way would be to just basically blast out the backside of the depot and go underneath this interchange. And honestly, I think that that's probably the smartest way to get here. The main reason for that is we have a whole bunch of bridges here already, so we just basically need to find a way underneath here and into the business park, which is probably gonna be where our high voltage line is. The other nice thing about this location is that if we play our cards right, we can have the entrance into the harbor from the business park go up and over the rail, which I think we could do right here at Power Street. So let's begin there. And this is a good time to talk about a mod that I'm adding into the build, Tygon's Rail Infrastructure Pack. The main reason I want to add this in is because I want this rail to be functional, which means that I have to have some sort of a rail yard at the end of this. Now, the vanilla rail yard is really, really large, and I really don't want to include that in this small business park. So having this general freight yard is going to be really, really clutch. The thing is, I can have even more than just this in this business park. I can add in one of these mini train oil stops and get even more activity into this park. That's going to create some traffic challenges too, which I think will be really fun to deal with. The other nice thing about this infrastructure pack is that it comes with unelectrified tracks, which is what you expect to see in North America. So I think it's a really good fit for this build. So let's begin with our two-way train track unelectrified, and I'm gonna run that right alongside of the highway right here. And whenever I run rail, I like to make sure that I have constant slope on. This is what I like to call transport fever mode. It just makes sure that we're prioritizing the rail rather than the ground, which is what you'd expect to have happen with rail. Now this first ramp right here is probably the only one that we'll need to modify. So I'll use Anarchy for this one, and then we'll convert this ramp to be a bridge. Now, my other concern here is the height. One of the things about having the unelectrified track is I can't see if a train can actually fit underneath here. So temporarily, I will convert this to the vanilla asset. And I can see right away that this is just not gonna work here. But with just a little bit of move it magic, we're just fine. And we can go right back to our unelectrified segment. Now our connection's right there, and I wanna make sure that we can get in between the existing pillars. So I'm looking from the rail yard, and I'll make this connection right across, right about here. And I gotta turn off most of my snap twos because they're causing all sorts of issues. And now for the height, I'm just paying attention to the grade. I wanna try to keep this flat or as close to it as possible. Beautiful. And this connection's a little bit too close. So I'm just gonna back this out a little ways, not the height of realism, but it's the height of getting things done. Same thing right here, a little bit of move it to correct our mistakes. So now I just need this to be a bridge segment. And I will have that stop right about here by adding a node and then grounding it immediately. Now the whole reason why I'm doing that is we've got a lot of grade to contend with right here. So I'm gonna back that segment up and then basically turn it right away. And that's perfectly flat right there, so we can turn and make our connection into our rail depot. And after just a little bit of grading, we have a perfect connection right there. So now I want to link into the rest of the tracks at the depot, and I want to follow some rules that I learned from Planner Pete. Basically, Pete did some research on cargo yards for me and found out that the most number of tracks that you can have coming together at any given point in time are 2. So with that in mind, I want to make sure that as we're building these connections in, we can have 2 tracks joining one another, but not more than that. I've already screwed that up in a couple of spots over here. You can see right here I've got 3, and right here I've got 3 as well. So So we're gonna fix those, but not until we have these ones established. So as I've gone through this, I've tried to make sure that we have 2 tracks coming together and no more. So that's why we got 2 right here, and then 2 right here, and then 2 right here going into the double track, and then the 2 double tracks coming together. But no spots where we have 3 tracks coming together, not like the other side of the depot, which we are about to fix. Because I've got 2 locations over here with issues. One is right here, you got 3 tracks coming together, that is a no-no. And then right here at this main junction, we've got 3 coming together as well. And there we go. I think that this is looking about 1,000,000 times better. This is probably the best rail yard that I've ever put together. So a huge thank you to Planner Pete for all the help with this. I do have to point out one thing though. The track carried electricity. So as a result, I did see that this whole thing was disconnected from power, and I couldn't resolve that until I added a couple of electrified segments in here. So if you try to do this and you're using Tygon's pack, you might end up with the exact same problem that I did. And as soon as I fixed it, this thing started working once again. Now there's one more thing that I want to do with the rail. I basically want to sweep it around underneath where our bridge is going to be. And I'll leave it right there for now because I want to switch gears and start to think about the roadway network. And we've got to start at the harbor because we're going to call a couple of mulligans on some choices that we made before, because there were a number of comments about how necking down to 2 lanes here probably doesn't make a lot of sense. And the main reason for that is if a truck were to turn into the harbor, they're going to block traffic. So it makes a lot more sense to have 4 lanes all the way through here. Now, if I'm doing that, I want to stick with this highway segment so it doesn't feel pedestrianized. So we're going to upgrade this, and that's going to cause all sorts of problems. But I think I have a solution. So I'm going to upgrade this right away. And you can see the problems immediately. We can't actually zone on the highway, so we're going to have to find some solutions to make things work. This part down here is fairly simple. I'm going to filter move it just to buildings, use the marquee tool, and then rotate these around. And now all of these are functional because they're facing the alleyway, which I think is just fine. Now the harbor is going to be a little bit more complicated, but I think that we can make this one work as well. The first thing that we need to do is bring power here, and for that, I just want to add lights to the side of the road. Now that alone is not enough, but I think that I could grab an alley piece and send it up right here and make that connection. And you can see that that has made our power connection, but our next issue is that we have no car access. And what that is some overlap between invisible paths and this path that we just added. But before we make the fix, I'm gonna add the water pipes underneath the road right where they belong, because they're gonna be a really easy way to make sure that things are working appropriately. Perfect. And now technically the harbor should be functional once again, but we've got a couple of invisible paths to delete. And now I should be able to redraw them back in. And now it looks like this is happy. So I'm going to speed things along for a bit just to make sure that a truck actually goes into this entryway. And I just saw something that kind of disturbed me. So no trucks have gone in this way, but I did have a mail vehicle come in here and do a U-turn. So I think that we've got to go back to the drawing board with the invisible paths. I was a little bit concerned that when I added these one-ways right here, we ended up severing the connection to this little segment right here. And I ended up being able to fix this. It's not the most graceful movement, but basically I had to take the road right here, the invisible road, and make it a 2-way rather than having 2 one-ways, and that seemed to do the trick. Obviously, I could delete that. It's not a super necessary movement, but I just wanted the whole asset to be functional, and it's working once again. So now we're finally ready to make the road into our new business park. So I'm gonna take Power Street right here and eliminate this segment because we're gonna go up and over the top of the quay and the river. Now for this, I wanna have the exact same 4-lane highway segment, So I'm gonna begin by upgrading this right here, and then we'll go up and over. And my preference here would be to not have anarchy on, but that's not gonna be possible because we're gonna be going just slightly into this parcel. So instead, I'm just gonna have to be really, really careful. And this is close to what we would need, but I think that we should probably go a little bit higher because of the freight that would be at this site. And in my opinion, that clearance looks a little bit better. I am gonna move this node though to try to get that pillar to just be a little bit beyond the road. I don't think I want it on the sidewalk. It seems just a little bit too close. Perfect. Now, before we land on this side, there are a number of things that we have to do. First and foremost, we're gonna have to call a mulligan on this high voltage transmission line. I think it's just not in the right spot. And then I wanna do a whole bunch of grading. This is what the developer would be on the hook for, so you better believe that we're gonna do it. There we go, and I tried to find a height that was fairly neutral, a nice average between all the different heights through here, and I think that we found it. Now, I'm not exactly sure how far we're gonna go back with this business park, but probably back to about here, so I've graded all the way back. Now, I'm gonna quickly denude this entire area of trees because we're not going to have basically any through here, and any that we have, we're gonna plant ourselves. And this opens up a nice view of the river and the inlet for us, and that's gonna be really important because I really wanna control the way that these are occurring. I think that we could eliminate this one if we wanted to, but I kind of like having a little bit of visual interest in this area. So I think I'm gonna keep it, and we're just gonna really square it up. If you've watched my channel for any length of time, what I just did might have disturbed you. That's not respecting the topography, you say, and I say you're right. But in this particular location, much like the harbor, I think erosion and runoff are much more important and much more top of mind than respecting the topography. There's gonna be enough money that's made here that we can do a whole bunch of grading, and the public-private partnership is one of the rationale for doing this amount of work. So now, before I add this bridge across here, I want to put together my key walls. Now, you might just think I'm going to use roads. I actually don't think I want to, though. I think I want to use some of our path key walls here. Now, the main reason that I want to use these is I want to have the factories backing straight up to these, and I have a really interesting idea to make this happen. Now, I just did a little bit of trickery here, and I'm not sure if you caught what I did, but basically I took the key wall, I drew it in place, and then after that, I removed the key, adjusted my landscaping, and then added the key back. By doing that, you're able to get that perfect new key wall while still being able to adjust the land on the other side of the key. So this is a way that I'm able to make things look just right. So now I want to be able to have a perfect key on the side of this. And one of the challenges with these key walls is that you can't actually parallel these, but if you use the pavement path, you can have parallel mode. So I'm gonna toggle that, find the perfect parallel, and honestly, I kind of like the idea of narrowing this up. This is not supposed to be a navigable waterway. It's supposed to just really deal with runoff. And now, I know what you're thinking. This looks jank and terrible, and it does, but it's gonna be easy enough to fix. The first thing that we have to do is grab those sides and pull them up to where we want them to be. Then I'm gonna do something I didn't do before, and that is I wanna make sure that this is all at the correct height. So I'm just gonna select all of the nodes and try to find a height that looks completely perfect, which I think is probably this one. And we'll raise everything up to that height. Then I'm just gonna verify, and yeah, there's no dipping near the key wall. So now we can just convert this thing. So I'll take my key wall and just use the replace tool up and down it. And then use anarchy to add the key. And And that's just about perfect. I'm not sure that I could have done any better. So we're gonna do the exact same thing over here, and then we should be done with all of our key walls. And this all makes me want to reconsider where we're actually placing this rail line, because right now I think it's in kind of a poor location. So I'll back that up, and then I'm going to extend this key wall a little bit further. And now we'll figure out the alignment for this track. And that should be perfect. So let's get this bridge over the track. And I think that something like this will do the trick for us. All that said, just like earlier, I want to make sure that we can actually clear this. So I'll temporarily electrify this, and yeah, that bridge is not nearly tall enough. And I think that this works now, but we've got some extra pillars and other odd stuff going on. So we'll need to redraw a portion of this in. And I think that this will do the trick for us. And now I just want to run this along the highway and then link it into this arterial up here. But there's a lot of grade over here, so I'm going to actually start over here by Ocean View Avenue. And I think if I play my cards right, I should be able to drop for almost this entire length. And that is looking pretty darn good in my opinion. I've already seen vehicles using this, so it must be a valuable connection. Now there's one more major road connection that I want to make, and that is a link between this road right here and Power Street. There we go. That is looking pretty good. I did do one thing that's a little bit unusual right here. I decided to elevate this segment. I just wanted to make sure that the nodes didn't smush together, which is something that will absolutely happen if you're not careful. And with that, I think that everything right here is looking just about perfect. Now for the rest of the roads, we're gonna build those as we're building factories, because I really wanna let the factory dictate the roadway network and not the other way around. Same thing with the rail. So there's only one more piece of infrastructure that we have to install, and that's going to be our high voltage line. We've got to make sure that we add this back in. And there we go. That is perfect. And with our infrastructure in place, let's move on to adding our buildings. One thing I want to challenge myself to do with this build is to make all the factories feel substantial. It's one of the things that I really dislike about City Skylines 2 is that the growable factories aren't very big. The biggest is 6x6, which honestly is pretty tiny relative to the size of an actual factory. I'd expect to see factories that are closer in size to this warehouse, which is not what we have in the game. But I think that if we use the factories like Legos and we snap some of them together, we can get some fairly substantial factories that look reasonable, that look realistic, and provide a ton of jobs. But before we can build any of those, we have to provide local access to all of these areas. So the first thing that I want to do is build some collectors and local roads. Now for all of our collectors, I'm just going to use the 2-lane road with a sidewalk. And I'll begin right here. I'm going to back away from the key wall and try to parallel it. And then I want to reorient the road towards the highway. And then so we're not cul-de-sacing this entire area, we need some place for this to go. Now, Pacific Avenue right here is probably a good location for this. This is already an arterial. So what I think I'm going to do is extend this and connect this up to the highway over here. And then we'll connect in right here. Now on the other side of the road right here, I need to find a crossing right here. I think I'm going to try to keep that fairly close to the end of the inlet right here. And then I want to make a nice connection into this road. And I think preferably this would be at a 90. But honestly, this isn't terrible. We could always add turning lanes and things of that nature to clean things up. Now, from this collector, I'm going to also throw in a couple of local roads. For the local roads, I'm going to use alleyways. And for this first one, I'm going to just try to mirror the side of the key wall. And I'll place this right in the center. I don't think that we need any local roads right here. We'll probably just have one user. And then the same thing right here. This will probably be 1 or 2 factory sites. If it's 2, and actually it probably will be 2, I'll just add a local road right here. Now over here, I plan on having a cargo train terminal. So I'm gonna place that right now. I wanna make sure I'm using the unelectrified version of the medium train general freight yard. And then I'm gonna throw this quite a ways over here. And then my goal here will be to have a loop. And then I'll just send a track straight in here. And perfect, that should work out perfectly. But that's not the only freight terminal I want to have here. I think that we're going to have a whole bunch of oil and petroleum storage out here. So because of that, I will add one of these mini train oil stops unelectrified. Now for the track on this one, it's going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to run this all the way along here. And then we'll loop back around. Now, I do want to have some abandoned lines as well, and one that I think would be really valuable would be underneath this bridge that is way too low to the ground. And this will cause me to adjust this road just a little bit as well. And that was a really positive change. We got our 90-degree angle right here at the intersection, and we have a little bit longer of a segment here for our bridge, which allows us to have not quite as steep of a slope, which I really appreciate. And now we're ready to finally start adding some buildings. And the first one that we're going to add is probably going to be a little bit surprising, but there were a number of comments stating that this aggregate mine right here is in a terrible spot and shouldn't be here. Now, I imagined it as storage, but how do you really load it up besides by truck? If we were to relocate this right here, we'd be able to fill it up with ships, so that's exactly what we're going to do. But I want this to feel like there's also storage for trucks, so I'm going to place some storage right here along the quay. And then I think that we can shorten up this bridge. I think that this is way bigger than it has to be. And now I'm just going to place a few warehouses and try to make it feel like one large building. There's 2 reasons for this. Number 1, I want it to feel like this is where a train could go and pick up aggregate. And number 2, I think it would be a great place for trucks to also pick it up right off the lane right here. Beautiful. So now let's add our aggregate mine. And I just want to make sure that I'm paralleling the track if at all possible. And then I'm just going to try to make this thing as large as I can and absorb as much of the space as I can. And there we go. I think that that looks about 1,000,000 times better than the old one. And I've left some room to be able to detail around here once we get to that a little bit later on in the video. Next, I want to build this oil storage. And this is really inspired by Oakland, where I saw a lot of this. So I'm just going to search for oil storage. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of these oil storage tanks. Even though I like the way that everything that we just built looks, we haven't really added any jobs to the city. In fact, I added this district for the Segunda Beach Business Park, and it currently has 25 jobs. So I think we've got to switch gears and start to add some factories, offices, and other businesses. Now, I want to begin by placing a signature building, one that is fairly easy to unlock, the Pharma. Now, I'm not going to actually unlock this. That would require us to plop a medical university, and honestly, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to place that in the city, considering we already have another college. So we'll just use find it and plop this thing. And this thing is absolutely massive. In fact, we'll have to sneak it in right here. And this is just about the only location that this would fit on this side of the river. But it's really important that we plop this one because it gives us 100 jobs. Most of these jobs are going to be highly educated, and that's really where we have a lot of our underemployment. So it's going to be really good to add those to the community. The other nice thing about this is it gives us a sense of scale because I do want to create a custom factory or two, and having this as a reference is going to be really, really helpful. But before we add that in, I want to add a city service or two. And the first one that I want to add is the post-sorting facility. The main reason that I want to add this is that it's massive. This is one of the biggest assets in the game. And ultimately, the post-sorting facility stores and processes local and intercity mail. This is a building that should reduce traffic and improve the efficiency of your mail service. So let's keep an eye on this icon up here, but ultimately, that's not the whole reason that I'm placing this. I'm placing it because it's going to produce jobs and it's a massive facility. Feels very fitting for an industrial park like this. And then because we're attaching onto a highway here, I'm going to need to add water pipes. So I'll place those underneath the road, right where they belong. And for power, I'm just going to add lights to the road. And I'll do the exact same thing with Power Street. Feels like Power Street should have power. And this building is absolutely massive. And even this mail storage extension, which makes the building feel even bigger. We could even put this on the other side of the river if we wanted to, but ultimately, I don't think that we need this right now. So we're going to leave it as is. Now, again, the whole reason I wanted to build these two first is to provide a bit of context for my custom factories. So I'm going to start by searching for very specific assets. And I want to begin by narrowing this down to some of our level 5 6x6 industrial buildings. And there really aren't all that many of them, especially when you consider that many of these are storage buildings. But this building right here is going to be perfect as the focal point of our factory. Now I want to find a couple of other buildings that we could smash into this one to make one cohesive factory. So I'll grab the level 4 version of this building. This one's going to be a little bit shorter, but it'll really blend well with this building. And then I really like this 5x5 building. I'll add a couple of these to the rear and a couple of the level 3 variant to the front. And now we're going to treat these like Legos and just attach them all into one another. And it's hard to see exactly what's going on, but I've tried to arrange these in a way that could make it feel like one cohesive structure. But there's a lot of distractions that we have to get rid of. So I'm just going to delete things like the extra signage that we don't need, extra smokestacks that we don't need, and we'll leave one in the main building. And then I want to recolor all of these assets to be the same color as the main building. And that recolored really nicely. And then the final thing to bring this all together is going to be to get rid of some of the fences and surfaces that make this feel like a series of disconnected assets. And now we're ready to move this thing. So I just want to select every piece of this building and find a good location for it. And I think I'll go with something like this. And this ended up being just a little bit too big. So I've repositioned this rear asset. And then I got rid of some of the rooftop pieces that were clipping. Now, I think that this looks really, really good, but it's missing parking. So I'm just going to add a little bit of parking in the rear. And then I'm going to add one of Algendo's surfaces over the top of this whole thing. We have this vanilla asphalt surface, ground only. This won't hide any of the road markings, which makes this the perfect surface for what I want to accomplish. And honestly, this facility isn't perfect, but I think that it's pretty darn good. Now, I did a couple of interesting things here. I decided to have a little bit of extra space on the side right here. I'm going to load that up with props when we are doing the detailing, but for now, that's why this big gap is right here. And you know, I was thinking that I would probably only have 1 or 2 of these large factories, but after seeing the way that this one turned out, I feel like I have to have many of these. Now, the interesting thing about this is if we take a look at the business park, we now have over 500 jobs, which means that this alone contributed 300 jobs, which is pretty outstanding. So I'm going to build 2 more factories, one right here and one right here, and we'll follow the exact same blueprint that we just created. And I've selected a few assets that I think that I can work with. And this time I've decided to kind of mix up some of the shapes. So we'll see how this works out for us. But the one constant is I decided to go with a 6x6 piece for the corner. And it's actually a different variant of this one right here. I've got a level 1 variant and a level 3. You know, these custom factories look fantastic, and they're adding a lot of jobs to the business park. We've got 1,000 here right now. We've got about 1/6 of what I wanted to have in this area. But, you know, I'm reconsidering something I said earlier. I said I didn't want to add a whole bunch of signature buildings that we haven't unlocked, but many of these signature buildings unlock by spamming things. And because of that, I think I might just place some of these. We've already done a little bit of it, but if you look, ground earth, for instance, you just have to have 10 mining areas. Right here for the vehicle factory, you have to have 10 oil areas. And I could meet that need by just having a whole bunch of tiny areas, but I made larger areas, and as a result, I have fewer of them. So I think rather than attempting to meet some of these needs, which are honestly not very difficult to reach, I'm just going to place the buildings anyway using Find It and choose what feels appropriate for this build. Now, one of the first ones that I think is a big miss in this area is ground earth. Honestly, ground earth could probably go right here. It's probably the most appropriate asset for this location. So I'm going to rethink this momentarily, and we'll place that right there. Now, I'm not sure that this is the right direction. Honestly, I feel like this is a much better fit for this area. And now we can sneak the aggregate mine in a couple of different locations. And yeah, I think that this is a significantly better layout. I like this so much more. So let's keep going down this path. I want to try to place the paper factory, switch on, and the vehicle factory. Now, the paper factory and the vehicle factory are 2 of the largest assets in the game. Look at this thing. So we're going to need to call some mulligans, but I'm here for it if you are. So I'll temporarily get rid of the highway, and I'm going to move this building. I'll place the paper factory right about here, and the whole reason it's here and not a little bit further back is because I want to have a bunch of lumber storage behind it. And right here, I feel like we have to have a rail connection. So I'm going to remove this connection right here that's not really doing anything. And let's see if we can fit in one of Tygon's medium train lumber yards, which would be a natural fit here. And now I've got to reorient this bridge before I get rail over here. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that this looks absolutely outstanding. And I love how functional everything is. I added some lumber storage right here. We've already got lumber stacking up. We're going to have this thing hopping as soon as we get a rail connection established here. And even our parking lot has a whole bunch of cars parking in it. So this, I think, is a smashing success. But the best thing about this is that it's added over 500 jobs to the business park. So this is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, it gets me thinking about some of these other industry buildings and makes me want to reconsider some of my choices over here. So I think that the car factory is a natural fit out here. But if we had the car factory, I think that we should probably place it near the medium freight train yard. And the main reason for that is this is where the cars could end up leaving the assembly line and being shipped somewhere else, or where parts could come in. So we're going to reconfigure things just a little bit over here to make that a reality, which will mean grabbing some of these factories that we put together and reorienting them. Now, I'm going to place this factory because I just disconnected water and power to this entire area, and I don't want to kill the entire industry site. And we can see that we would normally unlock this by placing 10 oil drilling areas. We're not going to do that. We're just going to find it. And if you've wondered how I'm finding these, I'm just going underneath buildings, then searching for signature buildings and narrowing it to industrial. And there they all are. And I'm going to have to delete this whole thing and go back to the drawing board. I'm going to play with fire, extreme fire, and try to move this entire factory. And I cannot believe I pulled that off. That's fantastic. The whole reason I wanted to do that is I want to make sure that we're not encroaching upon the river over here. Now, I'm going to be honest with you and say that I'm struggling a little bit to fit this asset in here with our medium train yard, but I think it's going to be possible. I just need to get a little bit creative with it. So basically, I'm thinking that I'm going to place this right here, and we're going to put our factory right in front of it. We'll have to reorient some of our roads, and we're going to have to move some factories to make that possible. So just like we did with our last factory, I'm going to move these as well. And we'll ignore that issue. We'll ignore that. Hopefully we're fine. Okay, so now I can place this here. And the nice thing about this is it's going to make placing our track much more straightforward. So we'll put that there. And then for this building, I just don't think that we have a choice. I think I have to continue to modify the river. So I'm going to get this situated exactly like I want it. And then we'll modify our key wall here. And I'm not sure how apparent it was that I was very stressed out while rebuilding this little canal over and over and over. But one thing I realized is that if I get this asset, this combined asset, too close to that key wall, I end up raising the river. So I had to redo it a couple of times. But ultimately, I think that this is pretty good. The only regret I have here, the only thing that might cause me a little bit of pause, is that we are going to be cul-de-sacking the car plant. But honestly, I don't think it's the end of the world. There's lots of other ways to get around here. So as long as we have fire protection within the business park, we should be completely fine. So let's reestablish this train connection. And this to me looks about 1,000 times more logical. I decided to completely redo the tracks through here, thinking about functionality, just not how it looks. And the result is that it ends up looking a lot more realistic, which I suppose makes a lot of sense. So I'll add the Pharma, something right like this. And I decided to spin this around so that we have proper roadway hierarchy. This is the end of the collector right here, so I don't mind that a factory is right on this. And that gives us a bit of space right here, and I'm gonna see if I can fit one of our custom factories. And I think that this fits pretty good right here. The only issue is that I used the wrong Algendo surface and I overwrote some of the road markings. There we go, looking really good. And it looks like our car factory is not happy right now, but I have an idea to fix this. And there we go. This is obviously much more iterative than I normally build, but I think that the net result is something that looks very realistic. So let's get these last couple of buildings laid out so that we can establish power and water once again. And I think this will fit very naturally right about here. This will fit very well, almost in its old location. And then for these two factories, I'll move one right over here. And I'm going to place this one over here. And I had to replace this building because I inadvertently had a whole bunch of invisible paths that were crossing, so this was an easy way to fix it. Now, I'm not 100% sold on the location of this building. In fact, I could be convinced that this is a better layout. No, actually it's not. I'm going to keep it like this because that opens up all of this land right here for development. So now I need to figure out how to terminate College Avenue. And I think that that'll be my approach. So we'll run this up the backside and connect in with the road over here. And then finally, we'll get our last couple of factories connected. And now we should finally be able to let this thing run. Oh, thank goodness. That feels so good. And there's really only one more thing that I want to add here, and that is going to be a gas station or two. So I'll place one on either side like that. And honestly, it wouldn't be bad to have a bit of fast food as well. So I'll specifically place some of these 3x6 Southwestern assets, which basically look like drive-through fast food restaurants. And this all looks really good, but one thing is catching my eye. I never connected this up with a road. This shouldn't be that difficult, but I will have to modify some of the internal pathing. And then in this particular instance, I think I actually have to delete this path and then redraw it in like that if I want it to work. And I had to remove this one as well. Easy enough. We'll just reestablish that, and now that's completely fixed. Now I want to adjust the business park boundary to make sure that we're covering this entire area. And I'm going to be completely upfront with you. 2 hours ago, I had no idea that this is what the build was going to look like. But after a bit of iteration, I'm really pleased with the results. And honestly, it just shows that sometimes you got to be willing to call a mulligan on your best laid plans and do a little bit of iteration, because you can end up with something that is much, much, much better. Plans take a long time to formulate, and sometimes you just gotta send it back to the kitchen and let it cook a little bit longer. So with our buildings in place, let's establish our freight lines. In theory, what we're about to do should be fairly simple. All we have to do is make 3 new routes linking up all of our cargo rail yards to an outside connection. Now, there are 2 different outside connections. We have Verde Beach over here and San Martin Obispo. I think I'm gonna send all of these to Verde Beach. So all we have to do is select Verde Beach and then one of our rail yards, and then link back over, and the connection should be made. So I'll do that with the other 2 as well. And now, assuming we have enough trains, those should all be good to go. But bluntly, that's not a given. We have 5 routes, and this route right here, for whatever reason, has 6 trains on it. So I'm guessing that we're actually out of trains right now. So let's name all these routes and get them sorted out, and we'll make sure that we have Clearwater Southern trains on here as well. So Route 1 goes from Verde Beach to the harbor. We'll swap this out for a Clearwater Southern Blue and only have one train. Our second route, the one that has 6 trains on it, we'll take that down to 1. This one goes between San Martin Obispo and the harbor. And I'll throw a Clearwater Southern white train on here. And our third one is the route that goes to our mini train oil station. I'll make this route black because of that. We'll only have one vehicle here, but I want to go a little ham, and we're going to have one of our long freight cars here. So we'll go with our 52 wagon North American freight train. This is going to cause all sorts of traffic problems, but I think it's the right choice. It's going to be a lot of fun. The fourth route goes to our car plant, and I'll go with something longer on this one as well, the 40 wagon. And then our last route is Timber Yard to Verde Beach. And on this one, we'll just use the Clearwater Southern standard cargo train. So with that, we have 5 routes, and each route has 1 train. So eventually these should clear, and we should have enough trains for all of our routes. And there we go, 1 train on each of the routes. Now, while we're looking at the trains, there's one change I want to make, and that's right over here. I spoke with B. Squagelhausen, who provided one suggestion, said that most of this looks good, but this segment right here should probably be single tracked. And the main reason that I made that change is we just had a lot of crazy switching things happening right here, and I think that this resolves all of the issues. And the only other change to make is to just kind of smooth out some of this track a little bit right here. That is much better. And then I just wanted to see what this area looks like with trains in it, and holy cow, it's a long train, but it looks like our queuing distance is just right. So this is absolutely fantastic in my opinion. And you know, I'm going to cut myself off there because things are not fantastic. In fact, I looked around just a little bit after recording this section and noticed that all of the trains were despawning. So I did a little bit of off-camera work. I figured all I have to do is double track this segment right here, and that should solve all the problems. And it did right here, but it just basically moved the problem right here. So we have a major capacity problem. You can see that the trains are backed up as far as the eye can see. So I think I know how to fix this. Tygon has this 4-lane train track that I think is going to give us the capacity that we need through here. So I'm just going to upgrade this all the way back into our depot belt over here. And then right here, I'll use Move It to improve this junction. And there we go. That should be the capacity that we need down this section. Now over here, we've got to untangle this mess. And I think for some of this, we actually have to completely redraw it. That looks a ton better right there. And then we're going to do a little bit of train lane math, because I think that it could improve things for us. And then I've telegraphed my next move right here. I want to double track all the way through the station. I feel like we're just kind of running into a bottleneck right at the station itself. And that's looking really good. Then our final junction that we have to address is right here, and you can see the issue. So we have 2 different signalized crossings right here, and even though I love the way this looks, I don't love the way that it functions. What's happening every now and then is we'll get a truck that just stops on a track. We also have lengths that are probably too long for the queuing distance that we have, so we're going to need to make a couple adjustments. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to back that up all the way to there. And then once again, I'm going to use this 4-lane non-electrified track. Now, the reason I want to use this is now I have just 1 crossing here, 1 signal. So that is going to be a huge improvement for us. Now I can take this and double track it all the way into the paper mill. And I'll focus this on that center track right here. And then going into our car factory, we'll split right here. So this isn't ideal because this is one heck of a junction, but I think it's what we have to do to make this work. So instead of fighting the game, we're going to work with it. Now, there are 2 more things that I want to do. Taking a look at the cargo route tool, because we have this 4-lane track, we can actually specify which track the trains are coming in on. And you can see that the green one seems kind of logical, but I think that we could consolidate this to the center. For the red one, this one's okay. The black line is also on the same line as the red. So I'll move that over. so that we're crossing less. And now to prevent despawnings, there's two things I want to look at. So we've got this train, it's going to stop right here, and I don't know if it can actually turn around based on where these crossing segments are. And you can see it's actually doing its crossing right here. This is way too long. So I think I'm going to swap this one out for one of our shorter trains. We'll just go with a standard Clearwater Southern. And then for the train that's going into the auto factory, this one wants to turn around right here. I don't know that there's a way that I can improve that. But what I know that I can do is add another crossing segment right here if I just adjust this node slightly. Now, I don't know how to make that go away, but I know how to add one. Now I want this one to go away, so I'll just delete that portion of the track. And then if we just redraw this back in, that should be gone. And I feel like I just made that about 100,000 times harder than it probably is, but I got the job done, so I'm gonna be happy. And lastly, I decided to make a couple adjustments on the rest of the track, controlling where this line is on this track, adding it to the center here so that makes that turn just a little bit easier. And I've done that for all of the routes. There was a lot of weird switching occurring, and now that we can add waypoints, I was able to completely choose which track we were staying on. So all the way up and down this, I've done that. And I've watched this now for maybe 15, 20 minutes. I'm not seeing any despawning, and I'm not seeing any backups. So I think that things are in a pretty good place now. So with our freight rail working well, let's do a little bit of landscaping and detailing. Okay, we've got a lot of work to do, so I'm gonna just set goals and just get to work. I want this to feel lived in, I want it to feel expansive, and I want it to feel dirty. So those are the three goals. So let's get landscaping. After about 4 hours of detailing, the business park is now complete. Now, I do need to point out one thing before we go into our city tour, and that is I decided to redo 100% of the decals. And that's because I read a comment that said that I wasn't being very deliberate with the decals, and I agree. I was just kind of spamming them all over the place. So I decided to try to be very deliberate, only put stain decals where I thought that stains might occur. I also added in some of the tire mark decals and added those throughout the build, and just in general, tried to put more thought into these. And I think that everything looks a ton more natural, a ton more realistic, and a ton more reasonable. So I'm gonna try my best to be good about decals now and into the future. I've also gone through older parts of the build and made adjustments here as well. And you can see that over here by the harbor, all the spam is gone. So I think that things look just a ton better because of this. So with our industrial park complete, there's only one more thing left to do. Let's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Now, before we wrap things up for the day, let's take a look at the stats for this new business park. This business park has over 3,000 jobs. Now, unfortunately, this is only half of what we need. This little tiny industrial park right here has twice as many jobs as this gigantic business park right here. But honestly, I'm okay that we didn't reach 6,000 jobs here because this looks much more reasonable in my opinion. And there are still opportunities to add more jobs. We've still got a lot of space over here. We didn't even develop this parcel right here, so I think that there's plenty of opportunities to add more jobs in this area. But I am very curious. It looks like our unemployment rate is really, really low, and it is. In the base game, it's showing 2.7%, which is really outstanding. And at InfoLoom, we're seeing a 1.7% unemployment rate, and even at the lowest level, our unemployment rate is not out of control, so I'm really impressed. And honestly, this makes me think that we need 6,000 more jobs, so the work is never done. And speaking of the work never being done, I want to make a fix based on your feedback of the previous video, and that is to the highway right here. Many of you mentioned that there's actually no way to get from these farms into Segunda Beach, and that maybe the way to fix this is to have a couple of underpasses. And honestly, I love it. It would be really helpful with flooding to have the highway elevated above the farms, and the underpasses would give a way to get to the city without jumping on the highway, which I think would be a good thing. Now I'm going to use Move It to do this, but I've got to do a couple of things to prepare first. The first thing I want to do is remove this retaining wall. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. Second, there is a water pipe underneath portions of this road, and I need it gone. If I don't get rid of this, there's a chance that I will grab it with Move It, and then I won't be able to move it ever again. So I'm going to take it all the way back to here. And just for the time being, we're going to remove that. And that also means that I need to pause things because we won't have water here. And I see that there's also a power line underneath there, so I'll get rid of that as well. And now we're ready to elevate this thing. So in Move It, I'm going to use the marquee mode and narrow things down to nodes. Now I should be able to just highlight the highway. You can see I've got 6 nodes right there. I'm going to bump this up maybe 15. And now we're ready to elevate this thing. So in Move It, I'm going to use the marquee mode and narrow things down to nodes. Now I should be able to just highlight the highway. You can see I've got 6 nodes right there. I'm going to bump this up maybe 15. Just kidding, 40. And you can see that now the highway is elevated above these side roads, which is the goal here. So I'm gonna do this all the way down the highway, basically until about right here, which is where we'll have our third and final overpass. And now some of this might be higher than I need it to be. I mean, this is really, really tall right here, but I want to get these overpasses in place. And for this, all I have to do is get rid of these nubs, then add some nodes on the highway, then we'll create an elevated segment in between those nodes. Now I can easily extend that all the way through. And this makes it very apparent to me that the height actually is pretty darn good. I think that that's just tall enough for a freight vehicle to fit underneath there. And then I decided to do a little bit of grading after the fact, which I think just makes it look a little bit more natural. So this exact same treatment I'm going to use all the way up and down the highway. But before I do that, I am going to reestablish this water and power connection, but I'm going to do it right here at this road. And there we go. So now we'll just go up and down here like I mentioned. And now the farms at the bottom of the screen can finally reach Segunda Beach. So this was a huge change, but I like it not just because it fixes the build. I think it's also a nice step in between this being just a regular US highway and an interstate. It feels like a step towards becoming an interstate, which is a good thing in my opinion. But with that, we've built the best industrial park that I think that I've ever built, and I really enjoyed this build. To me, a build like this demonstrates that even if you're not building the most beautiful thing, you can find beauty in it. You can really elevate it if you take the time to do so. And I really feel like we've elevated this build today. This is really making Segunda Beach feel really special to me. And I really, really enjoyed this one. And I really hope that you did as well. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing today, but you decided to hang out with me and build this hyper-detailed, hyper-realistic industrial park. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.